So, you want to know what the best Tobey Maguire Spider-Man figure is from the original movie lines from the trilogy? Well, I'm no expert, but I do own a few of these figures, and I'll do my best to tell you guys which one I think is worth having in your collection, as well as what not to get and what to avoid overall, and hopefully give you guys a better understanding of what you guys should pick up and what you shouldn't.
There's a little hint right here, right now. There's a figure right here that I would not fucking buy under any circumstances, which is the fucking 5-inch Black Spider-Man.
But let's start with the actual good figures that you guys should pick up, which actually varies across the second and third movie. Up first, we've actually got the aerial flipping Spider-Man, which is from Spider-Man 2. This figure was initially released in the Spider-Man 2 line, and it's actually one of the best Spider-Man figures I would say is in my collection. Let's take a look at him.
Also, I'm sorry that this fucking, image is, the worst fucking quality ever. I literally did a 2-second Google search for the aerial flipping Spider-Man because I only own this figure loose. So, yeah, sorry about that.
But here he is, the aerial flipping Spider-Man from Spider-Man 2. Now this figure, right off the bat, we can just see the sheer level of paint and detail that really went into this figure. Toy Biz never ever held back with how much effort they put into their figures. Fuck you, Hasbro. Look at that ass. Oh, that is a cute fucking ass. But all jokes aside, we really just can see the level of effort that Toy Biz put into their figures back in the day. And it's truly phenomenal just to see how these figures hold up to today's standards. Because I personally think they compete with some of today's Marvel Legends, which truly shows a lot about the care for the company. Like, the detail just shows throughout the entire figure. We can just see the texturing effect go throughout all of the sort of navy blue parts of the suit. And it really is just phenomenal. And this carries out through all of these figures from this wave. But I think we should just go into articulation. So the head falls round a full 360 degrees. He can look up that far, which is actually pretty good. And he can look down that far again, which isn't actually too bad for back then standards. His arm goes up all the way, and as you can see, rotates around the full 360 degrees. He also has a upper bicep swivel, which is good. He's also got a double jointed elbows, you know, he can flex those fucking biceps. But as we can see, he also has got upper wrist rotation. He's also got the flick of the wrist rotation up there, which is actually quite cool. And the only downside to this figure is the finger articulation. You cannot get this Spider-Man figure in a thwipping pose, which again is sort of just down to really what you want in your collection. For a bog standard figure, this is fine. He actually looks back this far, as you can see, he's dummy thick, and he also looks forward that far. So his crunch isn't the best, but it is okay. It was standards back then. He also has got a waist rotation, which actually goes around full 360 degrees. He also kicks up that far, which is very impressive, and he kicks back a little bit, not too much. And he also has this horrible ball jointed rotation at the top of his leg. He also got double jointed knees. He's also got a boot rotation, which is very nice. He has got a ankle rocker, but he has not got any ankle pivot, which is unfortunate. But he does have toe articulation, which is very rare to see nowadays on figures. So that's exciting. I say overall, the articulation on this guy is very good. And considering, you know, this guy can be picked up for a reasonable price compared to some of the other figures on this video, it's a very good figure, and I definitely recommend you guys get him if you can find him. He's very easy to find, he's very noticeable to find, and usually he's in very good condition because this figure does hold up. Fuck you. And moving on swiftly, we're actually going to go to the next figure, which is actually quite similar to the aerial flipping Spider-Man, which is actually the pizza scooter Spider-Man. A little disclaimer though, mine doesn't have all the accessories or anything. Mine literally has the Tobey Maguire head and that is it. But let's go check him out. Let's have a look at him. Here he is, the pizza scooter Spider-Man from Spider-Man 2. Now, being how similar this guy is to the aerial flipping Spider-Man, I'm not going to go over his articulation because it's pretty much the same. But this figure is actually really nice. As we can see, the Tobey Maguire head sculpt is actually very impressive for 2004 standards. And I would go as far to argue that this is actually better than some of the photo tech work that Hasbro do on their current Marvel Legends. Like, the paint and everything looks great in the hair. And you can really tell this does look like Tobey Maguire, at least enough so at that point in time, you know? And honestly, this figure though, being how expensive it is on the aftermarket, I really can't recommend it just because of how similar it is to the aerial flipping Spider-Man. The only thing I can say that this figure has got better over that is the fact you can get him into a flipping pose, which for some people will make or break a Spider-Man figure. But if you're really not too fussed about that, the aerial flipping Spider-Man will fill that Tobey Maguire figure spot that you might have in your collection. There's really no need to go the extra mile to pick this guy up, because to find him with all his accessories is very difficult, and good luck finding him for a good price. I was very lucky, I managed to pick mine up for an okay price, but it just isn't worth it. I don't think you'll have an easy time finding him for a very good price, especially with how the prices are looking on the aftermarket at the current moment. As a whole, this figure I would say is very good though. And if you have him with his alternate mask, which is obviously the Spider-Man mask, it will make for a great figure. Just to give you guys a little bit of a comparison, just to see him side by side by the aerial flipping Spider-Man. As you can see, there really aren't too many differences that I can notice, but right off the bat you can tell that the legs look a bit different. I think they look much sleeker on the pizza scooter Spider-Man, which is a great look, because I think the aerial flipping Spider-Man can look a bit weird sometimes. But in a pose, it's really not going to be noticeable. Anyway, let's move on. Right, so for the next segment of the video, I'm actually going to do two figures in one, which is the magnetic Spider-Man and the web trap Spider-Man. The reason for that is because these figures are just so similar, and the only real difference between the two is the fact that one of them is obviously magnetic. So yeah, let's just not waste any time and jump right into it. And here they both are, the magnetic Spider-Man and the web trap Spider-Man. Let's take a look at them. Okay, so we're going to start off first with the web trap Spider-Man. Now, these two figures being very similar, I will just say right now that the paint and detail once again has just not disappointed. Toy Biz really do just keep up with their known reputation of just caring about their products, and at the time selling them for a very cheap price, which is kind of, you know, funny because they go for ridiculous prices now. But as you can see, the paint on this guy just looks incredible. You know, the texture work throughout the suit, and honestly, the entire figure just is not planned at all. And the spider logo looks incredible. And the red is just a really nice glowing red that just stands out. It really does pop out on both of these figures as a whole. Let's start with articulation. So the head rotates at full 360 degrees, and this guy looks up far, like very far. Like, look at that. And he also looks down very far as well, which is just incredible. Honestly, this is the best Spider-Man figure for articulation at the moment. His arm goes up that far, which is incredible. He also has got a full 360 degrees, and there is slight butterfly joints there. He also does have a upper bicep swivel alongside with a double jointed elbow. He also has got a wrist swivel, which is incredible, and he does have that flick of the wrist motion. He can also go into a thwipping pose, which would probably make you want to get this figure in comparison to maybe the pizza scooter Spider-Man. And both hands do it, it's really good. But there might be something that puts you off this figure, which I'll explain in a minute, which is the crunch. The crunch on this guy sucks. He doesn't go forward far at all, and doesn't go back very far either, which is really bad. He does have a waist swivel, but I forgot to do it because I'm shit. He also does have a upper thigh rotation, along with a double jointed knee, which is very nice. He also does have boot rotation, which is always appreciated, along with an ankle rocker. And he does have ankle pivot, which is amazing. Toy Biz listens to the negative feedback of the other figures, and he does have ankle pivot, as you can see. It looks great. It's incredible. I highly recommend this figure. It's just honestly one of the best I think you should get as a whole. And he does have that toe articulation as well, which we all know to love too. Honestly, one of the best figures. I definitely recommend this guy if you can look past that sort of bad crunch. Anyway, moving on to the magnetic Spider-Man, which is basically the same figure, just with noticeable differences. He actually has got the same ankle pivot, so don't worry about that. It's all the same. The paint looks just as good on this guy. Head looks up just as far as well, which is awesome, and down as well. And that is really useful with these magnets. You can get this guy into some amazing poses. The fingers are not articulated, obviously, being the magnetic Spider-Man. It just wouldn't work. but he does also have magnets on his feet, and unfortunately one on mine is missing. But don't worry too much if you find one that has a missing magnet on the foot. It actually still holds in place very well, and overall you can get this guy into some cracking poses on your fridge or whatever magnetic surface you've got. And as you can see, these two just side by side, they are the exact same figure. Obviously one of them just has magnets. Fuck that guy, and yeah, let's just move on to the next figures. I recommend these both. Okay, so the last figure I'm going to be looking at for the Spider-Man 2 line, which is a bit weird because I do have another Spider-Man 2 figure, but I've done a custom job on it, so I'm going to put that in the Spider-Man 3 segment. But this figure is actually the superposable Spider-Man 2 figure. Now, a little disclaimer, there are actually two versions of this figure. There's one with magnetic feet, and there's one without magnetic feet. The one I own is without magnetic feet, and unfortunately the one that I own is a bit of a limp dick. He can't really fucking stand properly, which fucking sucks. I am actually hunting another one of these, so if anyone can help me out, that'd be much appreciated. But I am going to show him in this video because I think he is the all-around best Spider-Man 2 figure. But unfortunately, he is one of the figures that if you can find, he might be in just the world's shittest condition, which unfortunately mine is. He really isn't holding up too well. But I'm not too fussed about him because I've got both of the Spider-Man 3 superposables, which I will show you in this video. But let's just waste no time, guys, and let's get into him. And here he fucking is, the limp dick himself. Let's just jump right into him. Now, like I said before, guys, mine unfortunately is not in the best condition at all, but it is the figure that I was talking about. And just to give you guys a close-up of it, we can just see that obviously mine in time, the paint's faded away, but even then, it still looks just as good, and he's got fucking period blood on his ass. But as we can see throughout the entirety of the figure, guys, like the whole texture wave that we've seen on all of the previous figures is still there, and it looks incredible. Sit up, you bitch. Alright, so let's just go ahead and jump right into the articulation. So, the head falls around a full 360 degrees. Unfortunately, mine, it does look up, the figure's meant to, but with mine, the fucking back of him pops out. So, yeah, I won't be showing you guys that because I don't want this figure to fucking break until I get a new one. But his arm does come out very far, probably the best I've actually seen on any of these figures, which is really, really good. He does also have a upper bicep swivel, along with double jointed elbows, which is always really nice to see. He also does have that wrist rotation. He does have the flick of the wrist action. And he also has got individual articulation in the figures, which is just absolutely incredible. Individual articulation in the fingers is something truly, truly, truly rare to see on Spider-Man figures these days. And I don't know why, personally, Hasbro doesn't go back to this. Probably so you can't do shit like this. But as you can see, his crunch is pretty good. He can crunch back pretty far and crunch forward. But with mine, he's like a fucking limp dick, like I said. So it's really, really loose. He does have a waist swivel, which goes around all the way, which is nice. He kicks out that far. He does kick back, but mine is quite loose. So yeah, annoying. He has got also a upper waist swivel with double jointed knees, which is really nice to see. Also got boot swivel, and he does also have a ankle rocker, and he does also have individual toe articulation, but there's no fucking ankle pivot. I can't fucking believe it. With this figure being the superposable, why they didn't put that in, I don't know. Dumbest fucking decision. Toy Biz, you fucking goofies, get a fucking better job. I mean, you're bankrupt now. But that is just disgusting. I don't know why they didn't put fucking ankle pivot on this figure, but it is what it is. And I think overall this figure is probably the best Spider-Man 2 figure to get. But equally saying that, he just is a little bit hit and miss. You'll either find him for really, really good price in good condition, or you'll find him for a ridiculous price and he might not be in the best condition. I paid fairly reasonable price for mine, which is obviously, you know, the condition of him does say a lot. I didn't get a really good conditioned one, but I would recommend getting him. He's a good figure, but mine unfortunately just isn't great because his condition's not the best, but he's an old figure and I gotta cut him some slack. He still holds up and he's not the worst. So I definitely recommend getting this guy if you can find him. I'd say personally he is the best. Definitely pick him up if you can find him. But let's move on to the next figures.
And next up, we've got very, very, very disappointing figures to talk about in terms of Spider-Man anyway. There are 2 on here that I can really recommend, but the other 2 are just fucking dog shit, and you 100% shouldn't fucking buy them. As mentioned in the beginning of the video, the 5-inch figures are fucking shit. But let's get into it. And here they both are, the 2 figures that we're looking at next. Not a lot to say.
Now, these are the 2 figures that we're looking at, and I'm only going to start off with one of these guys, which is the blue one and red one, because this guy I want to get to later. But let's just take a look at this guy, and he looks good. Yeah, paint looks nice, the silver webbing looks great. He didn't initially look like that, I'm going to be honest. I painted the webbing on this guy because they were all faded. And the same thing with his black spider logo at the front. He was completely fucked when I first got him, and I did a custom job on him, and now he looks good. But I do recommend this figure because the blue and red look that he's got really, really gives him a nice effect. And he's quite unique. I'd say get this guy if you can find him, and this specific one in the superposable body is actually cheaper than the rest of them. But I think he looks good. I personally think this is one of my favourite Spider-Mans, and this is my favourite superposable Spider-Man. Let's get into articulation. So the head goes a full 360 degrees. He is meant to look up, but the fucking joint is like stuck right here. So I can't actually get him to look up and down. So that kind of sucks, and I don't want to break him. So yeah, but his arm goes up very far. This is the exact same as the superposable figure from Spider-Man 2. Just in poorer plastic because, you know, Hasbro suck. But he does have a upper bicep swivel. He can actually have a double jointed elbow. He has also got a wrist swivel, and he does have that flick of the wrist action, along with individual articulation in the fingers, which is very nice again to see. Now, the crunch is much nicer on this figure compared to the others. He actually has like a snapping gimmick, which means that it feels a lot smoother. He's also got that waist swivel. He also has that upper thigh rotation. He can kick up that far. He can kick back that far. And he also kicks out that far, which is the same for the other superposables. He does have a double jointed knee. He also does have boot rotation. I kind of fucked it here though, and twisted his whole leg around. So yeah, my bad. But he does have that boot rotation, which is very nice. And he also has got the heel rotation. He also does have toe articulation and no ankle pivot like the previous one, which is disappointing. But I do recommend this figure over the other one that was next to him, and I will tell you why right now. Let's actually have a look at this guy. This specific one is from Spider-Man 3, and this is actually from the Build-A-Figure Sandman wave. And all of the figures in that wave were fucking shit, apart from the Venom. In my opinion, all the figures in that wave were terrible, and this Spider-Man is no exception. And the reason why is because when you compare him to the Spider-Man 2 one, the colours are off. The red is much nicer on the Spider-Man 2 version, literally fuck you, and the silver webbing is way too bright. And I know you're like, oh, Kieran, you painted your own, the other looks really bright. But hold on a minute, that red is the correct red. It doesn't look good on this guy, he looks really washed out. And just overall not a nice looking figure. But if you can find him, I would recommend him because he does fill the space for superposable Spider-Man. But I personally think the blue one is much nicer and more unique, whereas this one is just, he's not great. But overall, he will do the job, and this guy I just think is a better pick out of the two. But they're both really good figures. Fuck them both. Let's just get into the next figure. Now, I know, technically speaking, this is not a Spider-Man 3 figure, and it's a Spider-Man 2 figure, and, well, fuck you, I'm putting it in the Spider-Man 3 place because I've made it a Spider-Man 3 figure. This is actually the spin and kick figure from Spider-Man 2, which you can tell because of the gimmick on the back, and this is my first custom job, so it's not the best. I do plan on actually coming back to this guy and redoing him in a better paint job. I just haven't got the time to do it right now. But this is better than, personally in my opinion, the actual Spider-Man 3 black suited Spider-Man figures that we got. Let's jump into articulation really quickly. The head goes around a full 360 degrees. He also looks up that far. And to be fair, that's quite good. And he looks down really far, which is really, really nice. His arms come out at a great 90-degree angle, as we can see right there. He also has got a bicep swivel, which is awesome to see. He also does have a double jointed elbow right there. He's also got the wrist rotation, which is lovely. He also does have the thwipping hand, which is great. So if you want to choose this over the aerial flipping Spider-Man, go for it. It's a great Spider-Man 2 figure as a whole. He does have a crunch backs that far and that far forward, which is quite nice. He also does have a waist rotation, which is beautiful. It actually is a snappy one, so it's nice. His leg kicks out that far, but this leg is kind of fucked because of the gimmick, so I'm not going to be showing you this leg. He actually kicks up that far. He does also have a upper waist rotation, which is lovely. He also has got a double jointed knee, and he also has got boot rotation, which is lovely. And he's also got a sort of like ankle swivel. No ankle pivot, but he does have a double jointed, not double jointed, he does have toe articulation, which we love to see. Personally, in my opinion, I think this is just better than the black suited Spider-Man figure that we got from Hasbro. I hate that figure, as you know. When I did my review on this custom, I don't like that figure, and I hate the 5-inch one even more. And I think this is just a better way to get a good black suited Spider-Man figure as a whole. Make your own. I did it, I think it looks good, and yeah, let's get into the next figure. Honestly, I am very, 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 very annoyed I'm even talking about this figure because I fucking hate it, but this is the 5-inch black suited Spider-Man figure from Spider-Man 3, which is in the 5-inch wave. And I was actually not even meant to get this figure. I saw this figure and thought it was the 6-inch version because there is a 6-inch version of this figure out there. But I got the 5-inch one, and he fucking sucks. He's a piece of shit. I fucking hate him. He's not even black, he's grey. And he just looks off. Like, there's something off about all these figures. But anyway, articulation is his head goes around a full 360 degrees. His shoulders come out all the way up, which is very nice to see, actually. He also comes and rotates at the shoulder 360 degrees. He's got a bicep swivel. He's also got double jointed elbows, which is nice. And he has no articulation in the hands other than a wrist swivel. It sucks. He has got a upper torso swivel, I think. It's quite nice. Doesn't crunch at all, which sucks. He kicks out that far. He kicks back pretty far, actually, for a 5-inch. But he kicks up that far as well. He's also got this weird knee rotation, which I just don't like. It just doesn't work. But he does bend at the knee quite far for a single joint. And no boot rotation at all. But he does have a boot pivot sort of swivel, but yeah, no ankle pivot or anything. Articulation on this guy is just awful. I can't recommend this figure, to be honest, because it's just not a good figure. It doesn't look good. He's shit. Let's get into the next one. Fuck it. I fucking hate it. Oh god. There it is. I am wasting no time with this piece of shit fucking figure. It just looks awful. This is just such a disappointment, this figure. Hasbro really let us down with this. So let's just jump into articulation. The head goes around a full 360 degrees, but he doesn't look up at all. He just looks down. So he constantly looks like he's fucking depressed all the time, which is, you know, great. Black suited Spider-Man wasn't emo after all, for all you emo fuckers out there. The shoulder is a piece of shit on this arm. It doesn't even go up barely at all. It's just stupid. I don't get this elbow swivel thing, but he's got a single jointed elbow, so he can't even bend all the way. He has a wrist rotation on this hand, and for some reason they decided to give him a weird fucking web gimmick on a Marvel Legend on that hand, which is just wrong. Alright, you shouldn't do that. Alright, but for this arm, he does go a little bit further. He does have a single jointed elbow, but his shoulder does go up a little bit more on this arm. But for this particular wrist right here, it goes all the way around, and it does swivel with the flick of the wrist action, but it just sucks. He does have a sort of mid-torso swivel, which doesn't really work very well at all for the figure. To be fair, the figure can kick up pretty well and can kick back surprisingly quite far, like probably the best out of any figure on this list. He does have these weird T-jointed fucking ball joints, so they're really weird and annoying. But he does have a double jointed knee, no ankle pivot, but does have a boot rotation that goes 360 degrees and does have a boot swivel, but no ankle pivot. Just a disappointing figure, to be honest. You can see why I wanted to make my own, because it just was a better solution. But I really cannot recommend this figure at all. It just doesn't look good. He's not even black, he's grey, which is another reason why I made my own. And I can't recommend it at all. He's just sucks. Unless if you need to complete your Spider-Man 3 collection, either of these will do the job, but I can't recommend either of them. They're just not good, guys. So I would not bother with either of them personally. They just suck. They're not the best figures at all. So yeah.
Now I know what you guys are thinking. You guys are just like, Kieran, we saw the title. We saw that Spider Criminal was meant to be in this video, so where the fuck is he?
Well, don't you worry, my friend. I have actually got Spider Criminal, very nice guy, to actually give you guys some tips and tricks on how you can actually spot the 6-inch black suited Spider-Man figure from the Trilogy line instead of the 5-inch, which was a
mistake that I made.
Get a load of this guy. Couldn't tell the difference between a 6-inch or a 5-inch figure. That's some rookie numbers. You don't want to be like that guy. You gotta be more like me. Mature, professional, knows what he's doing. Anyway, I'm gonna go to bed. If you want this figure, I suggest looking for two things to make sure it's the 6-inch version. Make sure your head looks deformed as fuck. That may seem like a quality issue, but they all have that. You're also going to want to make sure the copyright on the bottom of his foot says 2008.
But there you have it, guys. That is my personal opinion on some of the best Tobey Maguire Spider-Man figures out there. Now, I know I didn't talk about the first movie figures, which consist of the superposable Spider-Man and also the Battle Ramage Spider-Man. I didn't talk about these two because they're just not the best figures to get as Tobey Spider-Man, but they will do the job still as well. But I just didn't think it was worth putting them in the video. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I enjoyed making this video. Massive thank you to Spider Criminal as well for featuring, and yeah, make sure to drop it a like. Make sure you also subscribe as well, because I'd really appreciate it. Peace out.